This happened nearly 10 years ago. I was staying in the Adirondack Mountains for a mix of hiking and skiing. I had rented a small Airbnb cabin for the week, tucked away in its own secluded patch of woods. It was an ideal spot for outdoor activities. Partway through the week, though, there was sudden news about a blizzard moving in. I was not about to end my trip early, since I had already paid for the full stay. I believe it was a Friday, but I am not completely sure. That morning, I woke up to someone knocking on the front door of the cabin. I looked out the bedroom window first. All I could see were thick blankets of snow covering everything, with heavy snowfall still coming down. When I looked toward the front door, I saw a woman standing there in a parka, looking visibly shaken. I quickly got dressed and opened the door. She appeared to be in her 40s. Her face was red from the cold, and she looked exhausted. She politely asked if she could stay inside until the storm passed. I thought it was the decent thing to do, so I invited her in and told her to make herself comfortable while I made some coffee. She sat down on the couch and asked if I lived there. I explained that it was an Airbnb, then asked where she had come from. She said she had also rented a cabin nearby, but got lost in the blizzard and could not find her way back. She told me her name was Meredith. I offered her a mug of coffee, but she declined and said she was very tired. She asked if she could lie down on the couch. I agreed and finished making my breakfast. I felt awkward, to be honest. After eating, I did not really know what to do. Sitting around felt uncomfortable, so I went back into my bedroom and watched television. Outside, the storm was intense. The wind howled so loudly that it screamed through the windows. Not long after, there was another knock at the door. I looked outside again. This time, there was a man standing there. When I went to answer, Meredith sat up and asked who it was. I told her I was not sure and opened the door. It felt strange because the man told me almost the exact same story. He said he was caught in the blizzard and needed shelter. Since I had already let Meredith inside, I felt like I had no choice but to let him in as well. I told him to come in and get warm. He introduced himself as Mark. Meredith and Mark introduced themselves to each other and laughed about both being stuck in the same situation. They thanked me and joked about my kindness. Meredith seemed more energetic now and eager to talk. We chatted about random topics until the conversation slowly faded. The day dragged into night. The cabin became colder and darker, and the snow outside showed no sign of stopping. I offered them food from my fridge throughout the day. Eventually, the question of sleeping arrangements came up, though Meredith addressed it herself. She asked if both of them could stay the night. I agreed. They slept on the couches, and I went to my bedroom. I fell asleep fairly easily, comforted by the fact that my belongings were tucked under my bed. I am usually a deep sleeper, but that night I woke up to a loud thud. I sat upright. My bedroom door was open, and the sound of the wind was roaring. I noticed the front door of the cabin was open too, and Meredith and Mark were gone. I stepped onto the porch briefly and looked out into the woods. Fresh footprints led away into the snow. I saw Meredith standing there, facing me, holding what looked like my travel bag. I shouted at her to come back, using some angry words. I rushed back inside to grab my boots. While pulling them on in the living room, I noticed my bedroom door was now closed. I knew for a fact I had not shut it. There was no way I was opening it, especially after hearing footsteps on the other side. I finished putting on my coat and boots and ran back to the porch. Meredith was no longer alone. A man stood beside her, holding her hand. I could not tell if it was Mark. Both of them faced the cabin. I stopped caring about the bag. I ran to my Jeep and drove through nearly 3 feet of snow to get away. There had to be someone else inside the cabin that night, because someone had been in my bedroom. I was too trusting. I let strangers in and paid for it. I am just grateful they did not kill me. I got the feeling they wanted more than just my belongings.
My older brother and I always loved playing outside when it snowed. We lived near the woods. I will not share my town, state, or any other details about where we lived. One night our parents let us go outside during a blizzard. We thought hide and seek would be fun since the footprints in the snow would add a new twist to the game. I was the first one to hide. We were playing in the woods and using flashlights. I turned mine off once I found a hiding spot so I would not give myself away. I crouched low in deep snow between two large trees. I tried brushing away my footprints, but there was no way to hide all of them. I could see my brother's flashlight in the distance moving closer to me. He was definitely about to find me, so I ran farther into the woods in total darkness. I eventually lost sight of his light, or maybe he turned it off himself. We knew those woods well, and I knew which direction I was heading. I was not worried about getting lost. After walking for a bit, I noticed another trail of footprints in the snow. They looked fresh, like they had been made only minutes earlier. I followed them, assuming they belonged to a deer. As I got closer, though, I realized they were boot prints, not animal tracks. That meant I was approaching whoever made them. At first I assumed it had to be my brother. Maybe he ran past me without me noticing. I could not imagine anyone else being out there during a blizzard. With my flashlight still on, I noticed something dark sticking out of a mound of snow beside the footprints. I stopped and brushed snow away from it. As I cleared more snow, I realized it was a large black garbage bag that immediately felt wrong. I could already smell something awful coming from it. I hoped it was just trash. I tried finding the opening of the bag, then finally tore it open with my fingers. I gagged the second I saw what was inside. It was a decomposing human body. When I say gagged, I mean loud coughing from shock and disgust. I think I gave away my location because soon my brother's flashlight was shining on me. I turned toward him and motioned with my hand for him to run back home. He looked confused and kept walking closer, so I ran to him and told him to shut off his light. I pointed at the bag and whispered what was inside. Did not believe me at first, even when I begged him to leave. He walked over to see for himself, and when he realized I was telling the truth, he covered his mouth. Being the older brother, he quietly guided me back toward the house, urging me to stay silent. As we moved, we kept glancing behind us, thinking we heard footsteps following us. Each time, we picked up our pace. He had to keep the flashlight on, or we would be in complete darkness. Out then. After hearing another step, we both turned at the same time and saw someone standing about 50 feet away, caught in the beam of his flashlight, watching us. We immediately ran all the way home. The man shouted something at us, but we could not understand what he said. We reached the house minutes later and told our parents, who called the police about the body. Officers arrived, questioned us, and organized a search based on where we said it was. They did not send us back that night. The search found nothing, but they returned the next day during daylight and asked us to help retrace our steps. We tried our best, but the body was never found. It would not surprise me if whoever was out there moved it after realizing there were witnesses. We were just kids when this happened, and we may have been followed by the person who hid that body. I still think about how close we came to losing our lives.
It began on the night of the very first snowfall of the season. I had the following day off from work, so I was lying in bed, watching a movie and sipping on hot cocoa. Out of nowhere, something slammed against my window and nearly scared me to death. I looked over and saw a fresh splatter of snow spread across the glass from a snowball. I slid the window open to see what was going on, and I immediately heard a child laughing. That explained it. I shut the window and turned my attention back to the movie. Not long after, there was another loud smack against the glass, followed again by the same childish laughter. This time, I chose to ignore it. I figured reacting would only encourage whoever it was. That seemed to work, because no more snowballs hit my window that night. The following night, however, it started up again. This time it happened while I was asleep. I jolted awake to a much harder and more aggressive bang against the window. I opened it and looked outside. The snowfall had stopped, but the yard was still hard to see in the dark. Then I heard the laughter again. It was definitely a boy, and it sounded like he was around 10 years old. I shouted something out the window at him. It was probably a warning, but nothing too harsh considering it was a kid. After that, it stopped for the night. The next day, much of the snow had melted, though the ground was still mostly covered in white. That night, after turning off the light, I lay awake in bed, waiting and dreading the sound of another snowball hitting my window. Right on schedule, it happened. That damn kid was back. This time I was prepared. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the window. For just a split second, I saw the back of a small figure running off into the darkness. I quickly pulled on my shoes and coat and ran outside after him. I found the footprints starting beneath my window and followed them. I ran as fast as I could, trying to catch up. The tracks led across a grassy field and toward a road. They ended at a large sycamore tree. Around the tree were 2 white bands of flowers, and a wooden cross stood planted in front of it. It was clearly a memorial marking a deadly car accident. I checked again and again to see if the footprints continued in any direction, but they stopped completely at that spot. I eventually walked back home and went to bed, deeply unsettled. The next day, I asked around and did some research. I learned that a woman and her young son had died after crashing into that tree. That knowledge sent chills through me, but I could not bring myself to learn how old the boy was. I did not want to know. I feared finding out he was around 10. That thought alone was enough to haunt me. The next night, I thought I heard a child laughing outside my window again, though it may have only been my imagination spiraling. I ended up taking sleeping pills for an entire month, just so I would not lie awake in fear every night.